The late afternoon sun was a warm, buttery glaze over the bustling fairground. Elvis Presley, usually surrounded by screaming fans and flashing cameras, found a rare moment of peace amidst the organized chaos. He'd slipped away from a recording session in Memphis, craving a taste of normal life, a simple pleasure. Dressed in a casual collared shirt, dark trousers, and a pair of sunglasses that did little to truly mask his famous face, he tried to blend in, enjoying the scent of popcorn and cotton candy, mingling with the metallic tang of machinery. Laughter and shouts of joy echoed from the Ferris wheel, its colorful gondolas rising and falling against the bright blue sky. The whirring of the tilt-a-whirl and the distant tinny music from the carousel created a symphony of fun. Elvis strolled past a dart-throwing game, admiring the prizes, oversized stuffed animals that looked impossible to win. He thought about his mama, how much she would have loved a day like this. He missed her, a pang in his chest that no amount of fame could ever truly fill. He stopped by a ring toss, watching a young couple giggle as they tried to win a plastic dinosaur. There was a simple, uncomplicated joy here, a purity that was hard to find in his increasingly complicated life. He was just about to head towards a hot dog stand, feeling a rumbling in his stomach, when something small and out of place caught his eye. Near the base of a towering inflatable clown, amidst the swirling legs of passersby, sat a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old. Her blonde pigtails were slightly askew, and a smudge of what looked like chocolate was on her cheek. She wore a bright yellow dress that seemed too cheerful for her current expression. Her small hands were clenched in her lap, and her shoulders trembled slightly. She wasn't crying loudly, not yet. It was a silent, desperate kind of distress that spoke volumes. Her eyes, wide and blue, darted around, searching, pleading, reflecting, a growing panic. Elvis felt an immediate jolt. He knew that look. It was the look of pure, unadulterated fear. The kind a child feels when the world suddenly becomes too big, too loud, and too empty. All at once, his heart, usually soaring with melodies, now thumped with concern. He saw people walk past oblivious, caught up in their own fun. He saw a couple with 2 children hurrying, talking loudly. No one seemed to notice the tiny figure shrinking into herself. He hesitated for only a second. His first instinct was always to avoid drawing attention to himself when out in public. But this wasn't about him. This was about a scared little girl. He knew he couldn't just walk away. It went against everything he believed in. Taking a deep breath, he took off his sunglasses. Tucking them into his shirt pocket, he knelt down slowly, making sure not to startle her. He tried to soften his face, to make himself look approachable, not like the famous singer who could make grown women swoon. He knew a child in distress needed calm, gentle kindness. "Well, hello there, little darlin'," he said, his voice a low, comforting rumble, southern drawl, thick and warm. He kept a respectful distance, not wanting to invade her space. He noticed a worn teddy bear clutched tightly in her arms. Its fur was matted, its button eyes staring blankly. It looked like a treasured friend. The girl looked up, her blue eyes glistening with unshed tears, finally meeting his. For a moment, she seemed to freeze like a tiny deer caught in headlights. She didn't speak, but she didn't look away either. Her grip on the teddy bear tightened. The fairground noise seemed to fade into the background. For Elvis, all that mattered was this small, vulnerable child, and the silent plea in her eyes. He knew without a doubt that he had to help her. He wasn't leaving until she was safe. Elvis maintained his gentle, kneeling posture, careful not to loom over the little girl. He waited patiently for her to respond, understanding that a scared child couldn't be rushed. The silence stretched for a moment, punctuated only by the distant fairground sounds, which now seemed less cheerful, more overwhelming. Finally, a tiny voice, barely a whisper, floated up to him. "Mama," she choked out, her voice reedy and thin. A single tear tracked a clean path down her chocolate-smudged cheek. "Is that what you're looking for, darling?" Elvis asked, his voice still soft. "Are you looking for your mama?" She nodded, a small jerky movement. The teddy bear, clutched so tightly, looked like it might burst. "My name's Elvis," he offered slowly, extending an open hand, palm up. "What's your name, sugar?" She hesitated, her eyes flickering from his hand to his face, then back to the hand. "Lily," she murmured, her voice a little stronger this time, though still fragile. "Lily," Elvis repeated. "I was looking at the big clown," she explained, gesturing vaguely towards the inflatable figure. "And then they were gone." Her voice cracked on the last word, and a fresh wave of tears welled in her eyes. Elvis's heart twisted. He could only imagine the terror she felt. "It's all right, Lily," he said, moving just a fraction closer, his hand still extended. "We're gonna find them, don't you worry. We'll find your mama and papa." He waited. After a long moment, Lily slowly, hesitantly, reached out her own tiny hand. Her fingers, surprisingly cold, curled around his index finger. It was a delicate touch, yet it felt monumental. It was a sign of trust, a small bridge built between them in this vast, loud place. "Good," she whispered. Her gaze fixed on their joined hands, the grip, though small, was surprisingly firm. "That's a good girl," Elvis said, his smile widening. "Now, Lily, do you remember where you saw them last, or what they were wearing, or maybe your last name?" He tried to sound casual, not like an interrogator. Lily squeezed his finger. "Mama had a red scarf and Papa was wearing a hat. And we were going to get cotton candy." Her memory seemed to be a jumble, but the cotton candy part sparked a small idea. "Cotton candy, huh?" Elvis said. "Well, that sounds like a good plan. Maybe we can head over to where they sell cotton candy and we can look for your mama and papa there. How does that sound?" Lily looked up at him, her blue eyes wide. "You'll help me?" "Of course I will, Lily," Elvis promised, his voice firm and reassuring. "I won't leave you, not until we find them. We're a team now, you and me." He carefully pushed himself up from his kneeling position, keeping her hand held securely in his. Her small hand felt so vulnerable in his much larger one. "Are you hungry, Lily?" he asked, as they started to slowly walk, their pace dictated by her short strides. "We could maybe get some cotton candy while we look." He figured a little sugar might help calm her and also provide a good excuse to stop and scan the crowds. She nodded eagerly. "Pink," she said, a tiny spark of her childhood self breaking through her fear. "Pink cotton candy it is," Elvis confirmed, a quiet resolve settling over him. He knew this wouldn't be easy. A fairground was a huge, sprawling place, and finding two people among thousands would be like finding a needle in a haystack. But he also knew he had to try for Lily. He felt a fierce protective instinct rise within him, an instinct he hadn't known he possessed quite so strongly. He was no longer just Elvis Presley, the famous singer. He was, for now, Lily's protector, her guide in this bewildering big world. Holding Lily's small hand firmly but gently, Elvis began their slow journey through the heart of the fairground. The noise seemed to amplify around them, a cacophony of barkers' calls, children's screams, and mechanical groans. He kept a careful eye on Lily, watching her reactions, making sure she didn't get overwhelmed. "All right, Lily Bug," Elvis said, trying to inject some cheer into his voice. "Let's start by heading towards where I think the main cotton candy stands are. We can keep our eyes peeled for your mama with the red scarf and your papa with the hat." Lily nodded, clutching her teddy bear in her free hand. She was still quiet, her eyes scanning the crowds with a hopeful but weary intensity. Elvis could feel her small hand tighten in his whenever a particularly loud ride roared past, or a large group of people jostled them. They passed the shooting galleries, where the sharp crack of air rifles punctuated the air. Elvis considered trying to win her a bigger teddy bear, but he knew that wasn't the priority. He needed to focus. He subtly scanned every face, every group, looking for anyone who looked worried or frantic, anyone who might be searching for a lost child. They navigated through a throng of teenagers heading towards the thrilling roller coaster. Elvis instinctively shielded Lily, making sure she wasn't pushed or bumped. He realized how vulnerable she was, how easily she could disappear into such a crowd. It made his resolve to find her parents even stronger. "Do you remember anything else about your mama or papa, Lily?" he asked, trying to prompt her. "Like what color was papa's hat? Or was mama's scarf plain or patterned?" Lily furrowed her brow, thinking hard. Papa's hat was brown and mama's scarf had flowers. She mumbled, her voice a little clearer now that she was focused on answering. "Brown hat, flowered red scarf," Elvis repeated, committing the details to memory. Every little piece of information was important. They reached the main food vendor area, a lively cluster of stands emitting tantalizing aromas. The sweet scent of caramelized sugar from the cotton candy machines hung heavy in the air. Elvis bought Lily a big fluffy cloud of pink cotton candy, just as she'd asked. Her eyes lit up for a moment as she took a small bite, the sugary strands dissolving on her tongue. It was a small victory, a tiny comfort amidst her distress. While she ate, Elvis subtly approached a few of the vendors, keeping Lily slightly behind him. "Excuse me, ma'am," he'd say politely. "Have you seen anyone looking for a little girl, maybe with a red scarf or a brown hat?" Kept his voice low, not wanting to draw attention to himself, or Lily. Most shook their heads, busy with orders. One elderly woman, wiping down her counter, paused. "Saw a man and a woman looking a bit frantic near the Ferris wheel about an hour ago. Man had a brown hat, now that you mention it, but they headed off towards the games." "Thank you, ma'am," Elvis said, a spark of hope igniting the Ferris wheel. That was a direction, a lead. He turned back to Lily. "Lily, sugar, do you remember being near the big Ferris wheel today?" She nodded, her mouth full of cotton candy. "We rode it. It was so high." "Well, that's a good sign," Elvis said, trying to sound optimistic. "Someone thinks they saw your papa near there. Let's go check it out, all right?" They started heading towards the towering Ferris wheel, a majestic structure that dominated the fairground skyline. The journey felt longer this time, the sense of urgency growing as the shadows lengthened. The crowd seemed to thicken near the big rides, making it harder to spot familiar faces. As they walked, Elvis noticed a few curious glances aimed their way. He was used to it, of course. People were starting to recognize him, even with his casual attire. A few whispers followed them. "Is that Elvis?" He tried to ignore it, but he knew it was a ticking clock. Sooner or later, someone would surely approach, and then the quiet search would turn into a spectacle. He needed to find Lily's parents before that happened. For her sake, and for theirs, he squeezed her hand reassuringly. "We're doing good, Lily," he said, tried to project a calm confidence, even as a knot of worry tightened in his own stomach. This little girl was depending on him, and he wouldn't let her down. As they approached the Ferris wheel, the whispers grew louder. A few teenagers gathered near a strength test game pointed and stared. Elvis felt the familiar prickle of being recognized, a sensation that was usually exciting, but now felt like an unwelcome distraction. He held Lily's hand tighter, pulling her a little closer to his side. "Look, it's him!" a girl shrieked, nudging her friend. "Oh my goodness, it's Elvis Maid!" Suddenly, a small crowd began to form, drawn by the recognition. People started to gather, pulling out cameras, their faces alight with excitement. Elvis knew he had to act fast, both to protect Lily from the crush and to keep their mission from being completely derailed. He smiled a practiced, polite smile that acknowledged their presence but didn't invite more. "Howdy, folks," he said, his voice calm despite the rising clamor. "Just enjoying the fair today." He subtly positioned himself between Lily and the most eager onlookers. A bold young man stepped forward. "Mr. Presley, could I get an autograph and maybe a picture?" Elvis knew he couldn't refuse outright without seeming rude, which might draw even more attention. He also couldn't encourage it. "I tell you what," he said, keeping his voice genial. "I'm with my little friend here, and we're looking for her mama and papa. They got separated, and we're trying to find them. If you folks could give us a little space to look, that would be a real big help." He turned slightly, letting Lily be seen, a small, innocent figure beside him. The sight of the child seemed to momentarily diffuse the fan frenzy. There was a collective murmur of understanding, a shift in the crowd's energy, from excitement to empathy. Most people were decent at heart, and the sight of a lost child tugged at their heartstrings. "Oh, the poor thing," someone exclaimed. "Of course, Mr. Presley, we understand." A few people immediately started to scan the crowd themselves, genuinely trying to help. "What do her parents look like?" a woman asked. "Mama has a red scarf, maybe, with flowers," Elvis explained quickly. "And Papa has a brown hat." He pointed towards the base of the Ferris wheel. "We think they might have been here earlier." Crowd, instead of being a hindrance, suddenly became a vast network of eyes. People started looking, calling out, "Anyone seen a lady with a red scarf?" The impromptu search party was both a blessing and a curse. It was efficient, but it also meant Elvis's presence was now widely known. Lily, however, seemed to take it all in stride. She held his hand tighter, peering around the growing crowd. She didn't seem overwhelmed by the attention on him. Rather, she seemed to instinctively understand that these people were now helping them. To her, Elvis wasn't just a singer. He was her safe person, and now his friends were helping too. He led her around the base of the Ferris wheel, weaving through the groups of people who were now actively searching. "Mama, Papa." Lily called out, her voice still small but with a renewed sense of purpose. They circled the entire ride, and while many people were sympathetic, no one had seen a frantic couple matching the description. The lead, it seemed, had gone cold. Elvis sighed inwardly. The fleeting hope that had sparked at the cotton candy stand vendor's tip now dwindled. He knew he had to keep up Lily's spirits, though he squeezed her hand. "All right, Lilybug, no sign here, but don't you worry, we're not giving up. We'll just widen our search. Maybe they headed over to the big game section now, or maybe the animal exhibits." He considered taking her to the fairground office, the lost and found, but he worried that leaving her there alone, even for a moment, might be more traumatizing for her. And if he left her, how could he be sure she'd be okay? His promise to her that he wouldn't leave her felt paramount. As they moved away from the Ferris wheel, the crowd started to disperse, some still scanning the area, others returning to their fairground activities, buzzing about their Elvis sighting. Elvis kept his composure, his public mask firmly in place. But beneath it, his concern for Lily was deepening. The afternoon was fading, and the fairground lights were beginning to flicker. Time was running out. He needed a quiet moment, a chance to think clearly for both their sakes. The last rays of the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples. The fairground, once bathed in bright daylight, now began to glow with strings of multicolored lights, casting long, dancing shadows. The search had been tiring, leading them from one end of the fair to the other, following faint leads that invariably led to dead ends. Lily, despite her brave attempts, was clearly wilting. Her steps had become slower, her hand in his felt heavier, and her eyes were now droopy with fatigue. "Lily, sugar," Elvis said gently, looking down at her tired face. "How about we take a little break? My feet are telling me they need a rest. How about yours?" She nodded, a small yawn escaping her. "I'm a bit tired," she whispered. "I know, darling," he said, his voice full of sympathy. He spotted a quiet bench tucked away near a less crowded section beside a small decorative fountain. It was away from the main thoroughfares, offering a temporary reprieve from the relentless noise and crowds. "Let's sit here for a bit," he suggested, guiding her to the bench. He carefully helped her up, making sure she was comfortable. He sat beside her, keeping a comforting presence. The bubbling sound of the fountain was a soothing backdrop, a welcome contrast to the fair's usual din. Pulled out a handkerchief from his pocket and gently wiped the last remnants of chocolate from her cheek. "You hungry again, Lily?" he asked. "We could grab another snack. How about some of those little donuts? They smell mighty good." She shook her head. "No, thank you." Her gaze was fixed on the shimmering water in the fountain. "You're a real brave little lady, you know that?" Elvis said softly. "Walking all this way with me, staying strong. Your mama and papa are going to be so proud of you when we find them, Lily sighed, a small childlike sound. Do you think they're looking for me? Questions so simple and heartbreaking squeezed Elvis's heart. I know they are, Lily, he said, his voice firm and unwavering. They're probably worried sick, just like you are. They love you very much. And they're searching for you right now, I promise. He paused, thinking. He needed to keep her mind off her fear, if only for a little while. You know, when I was a little boy about your age, I got lost once too, he began, fabricating a gentle story from fragments of his own childhood experiences. My mama, she took me to the general store, and I saw the most beautiful toy truck. I just had to get a closer look, and when I looked up, she was gone. Lily turned her head, her blue eyes wide, captivated by his story. Her hold on the teddy bear loosened a fraction. My heart jumped right into my throat, Elvis continued, keeping his voice calm and reassuring. He smiled, and Lily managed a small, tentative smile back. She found you? She sure did, Elvis confirmed. And your mama and papa, they're looking for you too. And they're gonna find you. We just gotta be patient and help them along. The shared moment felt precious, a quiet island in the sea of fairground chaos. Lily leaned her head slightly against his arm, a tiny gesture of comfort and trust. He felt the soft brush of her hair and the warmth of her small body. It was a comfort he hadn't expected, a connection that transcended their brief acquaintance. He wasn't just a celebrity helping a fan, he was simply a kind stranger helping a child in need. And in doing so, he felt a deeper sense of purpose than any roaring crowd had ever given him. The fairground lights seemed to twinkle a little brighter, a silent promise in the deepening twilight. As the last vestiges of daylight faded completely, the fairground transformed. The string lights and neon signs illuminated the attractions with a garish glow, and the crowds, though still thick, had a different feel. Families with young children started to thin out, replaced by teenagers, and young adults seeking evening thrills. The air grew cooler, carrying with it a new sense of urgency for Elvis. Are you feeling a little better, Lilybug? Elvis asked as they rose from the bench. Her little hand found his. A voice still quiet. The brief calm had helped, but the underlying fear hadn't vanished. Elvis knew they couldn't just wander aimlessly anymore. The earlier leads had fizzled. It was time for a more direct approach. I think it's time we went to the fairground office. They have a special place there for lost children, and your mama and papa might have gone there. Alone, she whispered, clinging to him. No, never alone, darling. Elvis quickly reassured her. I'll be right there with you every step of the way. We'll go together and we'll tell them all about it. It's like a special place where people help lost children find their families. He guided her towards the direction. He remembered seeing signs for information and first aid. The walk felt longer than before, the fairground suddenly seeming vast and intimidating in the artificial light. The sounds, once cheerful, now seemed almost menacing. The laughter a little too loud, the music a little too brassy. They finally reached a small, brightly lit building with a sign that clearly read, Fairground Office and Lost and Found. A middle-aged woman with tired eyes sat behind a counter talking on a rotary phone. Elvis squared his shoulders, preparing himself. Excuse me, ma'am, he said, stepping up to the counter. Lily still firmly holding his hand, half hidden behind his leg. The woman put down the phone, her eyes, initially weary, widened as they landed on Elvis. Recognition dawned, quickly followed by surprise. Yes, ma'am, Elvis replied, trying to be concise and to the point. I've got a lost little girl here. Her name is Lily. She got separated from her mama and papa. We've been looking for a while, and we thought they might have reported her here. He gently guided Lily forward so the woman could see her. Lily mumbled something inaudible. The woman's professional demeanor immediately kicked in. She softened her expression. Oh, you poor dear, she said to Lily. She pulled out a clipboard. All right, Mr. Presley, what's her last name? Lily? Lily mumbled something inaudible. She remembers her mama has a red scarf, maybe with flowers, and her papa has a brown hat, and they were going for cotton candy. The woman started flipping through pages on her clipboard. We've had a few reports of lost children tonight, sir. It's been quite a busy one, she said, her brow furrowed. Let's see. A boy named Thomas, a girl named Susie. She shook her head. Nothing matching a Lily or that description of the parents, I'm afraid. Not yet, anyway. A wave of disappointment washed over Elvis. He felt Lily's hand clench his. He knelt down, putting himself at her eye level. It's okay, Lily, he whispered, trying to keep the disappointment out of his voice. They probably just haven't made it here yet. They might still be looking for you out there, like we are for them. He looked back at the woman. Do you make announcements over the loudspeaker? Yes, sir, every 15 minutes or so for lost children, she confirmed. Can put out a new one right away. Do you want to leave her here, Mr. Presley? She'll be safe with me. Elvis hesitated. He trusted this woman. She seemed kind. The thought of leaving Lily, after promising not to, felt wrong, and Lily, sensing the question, pressed closer to his leg. No, ma'am, thank you, he said. I think it's best if we keep looking. But if you could make an announcement, Lily, a little girl in a yellow dress with a teddy bear, looking for her mama with a red scarf and papa with a brown hat, please report to the fairground office. Something like that. Of course, Mr. Presley, the woman said, already reaching for the microphone. I'll do that right away. As Elvis led Lily out of the office, the loudspeakers crackled to life and the woman's voice, amplified and distorted, began to echo across the fairground. Attention fairground patrons, with a teddy bear looking for her mama with a red scarf and papa with a brown hat. The sound of her name echoing over the entire fair made Lily flinch. She looked up at Elvis, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and a fragile hope. He squeezed her hand, offering what comfort he could. The night was growing darker, the air colder, and the search was far from over. The worry in his gut was a heavy, cold stone, but he wouldn't let it show, not to Lily. The loudspeaker announcement, though necessary, felt like a public declaration of Lily's vulnerability. Elvis could feel Lily shrink beside him, her small body tensing. He gently rubbed her back with his free hand, hoping to soothe her. That's good, Lily Bug, he whispered. Now everyone knows we're looking. It just makes it easier for your mama and papa to find you. They decided to walk towards the exit gates, thinking that perhaps her parents, if they hadn't heard the announcement or hadn't found the office yet, might be waiting there, hoping Lily would eventually make her way out. The stream of people heading towards the exits was steady, but not as dense as the heart of the fair. As they walked, Elvis kept up a quiet conversation with Lily, trying to distract her from the lingering fear. Tell me about his name. Lily looked down at the matted bear in her arms. Barnaby, she whispered. He's my best friend. Barnaby? Huh. He looks like a loyal friend. Did he come to the fair with you often? Lily nodded. Always. Mama says Barnaby has to come everywhere. Her eyes suddenly lit up with a memory. Mama says. She says she loves the lights, and she always takes a picture of the biggest light. Elvis's mind raced. The biggest light? What kind of light? Lily. She pointed vaguely towards the main entrance, where a huge, elaborate archway covered in thousands of twinkling welcome and farewell. That one. The arch. A new flicker of hope ignited within Elvis. This was specific. This was a habit. Parents often had routines, traditions. If Mama loved the lights and took a picture of the arch, perhaps they would be near there waiting, hoping Lily would remember and come back to a familiar spot. Lily, that's a wonderful memory, Elvis said, his voice now tinged with excitement. That big archway, it's usually where people meet up if they get separated. Do you think your mama would go there? Lily's eyes widened. Maybe. She always says it's the prettiest part of the fair. Well then, Elvis declared. a renewed sense of purpose filling him. Let's head there. It's a good place for people to meet, and it's a good place for us to look for. Mama with her red scarf and Papa with his brown hat. They started walking towards the archway, weaving through the thinning crowds. Elvis scanned faces intently, looking for any sign of distress, any frantic searching, any glimpse of a red scarf or a brown hat. The public announcement played again, a little further away now, reminding everyone of the lost child. As they neared the main archway, the crowd grew slightly denser. People were lingering, waiting for friends, or simply admiring the glittering display. Elvis kept his arm protectively around Lily, pulling her closer when a group of rowdy teenagers passed by. Suddenly, a voice filled with an unbearable anguish cut through the fairground. It wasn't a loudspeaker, but a live voice, desperate and raw. "Lily, Lily, where are you, baby?" Elvis's head snapped up. It was a woman's voice, thick with desperation. He scanned the faces, following the sound. His eyes landed on a woman, her face pale and streaked with tears, standing near one of the archway's illuminated pillars. Her hands were clasped over her mouth, and her eyes were wild with fear. Around her shoulders, draped loosely, was a red scarf with a delicate floral pattern. Lily, at the sound of the voice, gasped. "Mama!" she cried out, her small voice piercing the air. She pulled her hand from Elvis's, a sudden burst of energy propelling her forward. Lily burst from Elvis's side, a tiny yellow flash, stumbling a little but propelled by sheer instinct. "Mama!" she shrieked again, her voice filled with an overwhelming relief that echoed across the plaza. Beneath the grand archway, the woman froze, her head snapping up, her tear-filled eyes locked onto the small running figure. For a moment she seemed to disbelieve what she was seeing, as if Lily were a mirage. Then a raw, guttural sob tore from her throat. "Lily Bug! Oh, my baby!" She rushed forward, arms outstretched. The reunion was swift, a blur of yellow dress and red scarf. Lily launched herself into her mother's embrace, burying her face in her shoulder. As the woman crumpled to her knees, holding her daughter so tightly, it seemed she might never let go. Tears streamed down the mother's face, tears of profound relief and overwhelming joy. She rocked Lily back and forth, murmuring words of endearment, checking her, stroking her hair. Elvis stood back, a silent observer, a lump forming in his own throat. He felt an immense sense of relief wash over him, so powerful it almost buckled his knees. He had done it. Lily was safe. Just then, a man equally frantic rushed up to the woman and child. His face was etched with worry, but upon seeing the embrace, his features softened into a mask of pure relief. He wore a brown hat, pushed back slightly on his head. "Sarah, Lily!" "Oh, my God, you found her!" he cried, immediately enveloping both his wife and daughter in a tight, protective hug. The family was whole again. Elvis watched the beautiful, chaotic reunion. Parents, overwhelmed with emotion, were oblivious to him for a moment, lost in their joy. He felt a quiet satisfaction, a warmth spreading through his chest that was far more fulfilling than any applause. As the initial surge of emotion began to subside, Lily, still nestled in her mother's arms, looked up. Her eyes found Elvis, and she reached out a small hand towards him. "Mama, Papa," she said, her voice muffled but clear. "This is Elvis. He helped me find you." The mother, Sarah, looked up, her tear-filled eyes finally focusing on the tall, handsome man standing a few feet away. Her brow furrowed for a moment, then her eyes widened in dawning recognition. Her jaw dropped. "Elvis Presley?" she whispered, disbelief warring with profound gratitude. The father, equally astonished, pulled back from the hug, his gaze fixed on Elvis. "Mr. Presley, is that really you?" he stammered, removing his brown hat respectfully. Elvis offered them a soft, reassuring smile. "I found Lily over by the big clown. She was looking for you folks." Sarah, still holding Lily, slowly pushed herself up, her legs unsteady. She took a step towards him, her hands still trembling. "Oh, Mr. Presley," she began. her voice cracking with emotion. I don't know what to say. We'd been looking for hours. We were so worried. We went to the office. We went everywhere. Tears welled up in her eyes again. You saved her. You saved our baby. Her husband, still clutching Lily's hand, stepped forward too. We can't thank you enough, sir. We owe you everything. Elvis gently raised a hand. You don't owe me a thing, he said, his voice sincere. Just seeing her safe with you, that's all the thanks I need. He looked at Lily, who was now beaming, her face scrubbed clean of tears by her mother's anxious hands. Lily here, she's a real brave little trooper. She helped me too, gave me good clues. Parents looked from Elvis to their daughter, then back to Elvis, their astonishment mixed with immense gratitude. The bond forged between the superstar and the lost child was evident in the way Lily still instinctively reached out to him, a silent testament to the kindness he had shown her. The fairground, which had felt so overwhelming just moments ago, now felt like the backdrop to a profound and heart-warming miracle. The initial shock of finding their daughter, combined with the unbelievable revelation of their rescuer's identity, left Lily's parents, Sarah and Tom, speechless for a moment. Sarah, still holding Lily tightly, finally found her voice. Mr. Presley, she repeated, her voice thick with emotion. We are so grateful. We were just beside ourselves with worry. We thought we'd never see her again. Her eyes brimmed with fresh tears, but these were tears of immense relief. Tom, Lily's father, stepped forward, extending a hand to Elvis. Tom Miller. Sir, this is my wife, Sarah. We don't know how to thank you. Is there anything we can do? He seemed at a loss, his relief palpable, mixed with a visible awe at being in the presence of Elvis Presley. Elvis shook Tom's hand firmly. Tom? Sarah? He said, his smile warm and reassuring. Like I said, seeing Lily safe with you, that's thanks enough, really. No need for anything else. He glanced down at Lily, who was now clinging to her mother, but her eyes were still fixed on Elvis, a tiny smile playing on her lips. Lily told us you were looking for her, Sarah added, looking at her daughter with renewed tenderness. She was brave, wasn't she? Bravest little lady I've met all day, Elvis confirmed, winking at Lily. She kept her spirits up, even when we hit a few dead ends. The small group stood for a moment under the glittering archway, bathed in the multicolored light of the fairground. Other fairgoers, drawn by the emotional reunion and the whispers of Elvis Presley's presence, had begun to gather, respectfully keeping their distance, but watching with sympathetic eyes. We were just about to go back to the lost and found office, Tom explained, running a hand through his hair. We'd been everywhere else. We even tried calling out for her. I heard the announcement on the loudspeaker, Sarah added. We were just on our way to the office when Lily, her voice trailed off, her eyes welling up again. Thank God you found her, Mr. Presley. Who knows what could have happened? Elvis gently put a hand on Sarah's shoulder. She's safe now, ma'am. That's what matters. He saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the raw emotion. Why don't you two take Lily home? She's had a long day. Lily, overhearing, pulled away from her mother slightly and looked up at Elvis. Are you coming with us? She asked, her voice small. Elvis knelt down again, bringing himself to her level. No, Lily Bug, he said softly. I think your mama and papa need you all to themselves right now. And I got some things I gotta do too. He looked into her bright blue eyes, seeing the full trust and affection she had developed for him in just a few short hours. But you be a good girl for your mama and papa, all right? And you take good care of Barnaby. He gently ruffled her hair. Lily, with surprising confidence, leaned in and gave him a quick, spontaneous hug around his neck, her small arms squeezing tightly. Thank you, Elvis, she whispered into his ear. Elvis hugged her back, a lump forming in his throat. It was a simple, pure gesture, and it meant more to him than any roaring stadium crowd. You're very welcome, Lily, he whispered back, his voice a little hoarse. As she pulled away, Sarah and Tom looked on, deeply moved by the scene. Sarah reached into her purse and pulled out a small, crumpled bill. "Please, Mr. Presley," she pleaded, holding it out to him. "At least, let us give you something for your time, for your kindness." Elvis gently pushed her hand back. "Ma'am, please, I couldn't possibly take money for this. This was just something anyone would do. I was glad to help." He stood up, looking at the parents. "Just promise me you'll keep a close eye on this little firecracker, all right?" He smiled, trying to lighten the mood. Tom chuckled, a sound of profound relief. "You can bet on that, Mr. Presley. She won't be out of our sight for a long, long time." As they began to turn to leave, Lily nestled in her mother's arms, waved a small hand at Elvis. "Bye, Elvis." "Bye, Lily," he called back, waving as they slowly disappeared into the bustling fairground exit. He watched until they were completely out of sight, a profound sense of peace settling over him. He felt a quiet joy, a deep satisfaction that transcended the glamour of his own life. With Lily safely reunited with her parents, the buzzing energy of the fairground seemed to shift for Elvis. The frantic urgency that had gripped him for hours had dissipated, replaced by a quiet, reflective calm. He walked away from the main archway, back into the heart of the fair. But this time he wasn't looking for a lost child. He was simply soaking in the atmosphere, allowing the experience to settle within him. The fair was still vibrant, but to Elvis it felt different now. He saw the lights, the rides, the people, but he also saw the hidden vulnerabilities, the quiet moments of fear, and the overwhelming joy of relief. He felt connected to it all in a way he hadn't before. As he walked, a few people still recognized him, offering respectful nods or quiet smiles, no longer demanding autographs or pictures. The news of him helping a lost child had spread, creating a different kind of buzz around him. It wasn't the usual fan frenzy. It was a sense of shared humanity, a quiet appreciation for a public figure, showing a deeply personal kindness. He passed a ring toss game again, the one he'd seen when he first spotted Lily. This time he stopped. "How much to play, friend?" he asked the carny. He played a few rounds, not for the prize, but for the simple act of it. He won a small fuzzy yellow duck. It was nothing grand, but he held it gently. He thought of Lily, of her bright yellow dress, of Barnaby. This little duck, he decided, would be a quiet reminder of the day. Later, as the fair began to wind down and the crowds thinned further, Elvis found himself by the entrance again. The air was cooler, carrying the faint scent of stale popcorn and damp earth. He looked up at the grand archway, still brilliantly lit, remembering the raw emotion of the reunion just a short while ago. His life was usually a whirlwind of recording, sessions, tours, and movie sets. He was surrounded by adulation, by handlers, by demands. But today he had been just a man, helping a child. And in that simplicity he found a profound truth. He thought about Lily's tiny hand in his, her trust, her innocent questions, her spontaneous hug. Thought about the sheer, unadulterated relief on our parents' faces. It was a reminder that for all the fame, the fortune, and the wild success, the deepest, most meaningful connections were often found in the quiet moments of service. In reaching out to another human being in their moment of need. He wasn't a hero, not really. He just did what he hoped anyone would do. But in doing so, he had touched a family's life, and they had in turn touched his. He had seen fear turn to hope, and despair turn to boundless joy. He had witnessed a small miracle, and he had been a part of it. As he walked towards his car parked discreetly away from the main fairground, he felt a lightness in his step. The fatigue was there, but it was overshadowed by a sense of quiet fulfillment. The fairground, usually a place of fleeting entertainment, had offered him something far more enduring. He drove away from the dazzling lights of the fair, leaving behind the sounds of laughter and music and the scent of sweet treats. But he carried something precious with him. The memory of a lost little girl named Lily, the warmth of her small hand in his, and the reaffirmation that a simple act of kindness could be the most powerful melody of all. He knew, deep in his heart, that this day at the fairground, far from the roar of the crowd, had been one of the most important performances of his life.